How do we actually show musicality on this thing? I mean, it's a snare drum. Playing this instrument is like playing a piano that has 87 broken keys, and you're left with just one single note. It's like writing a letter to someone using only the letter R. You have one drum. It doesn't change pitch like timpani, and we're working at an extreme disadvantage when it comes to music making. The point is this: you're going to have to get creative if you want to express something. Even though most snare drum etudes are full of technical puzzles and combinations, your first responsibility is the same here as it is with any music: to be a storyteller and to bring life to the music. Stories have direction, and music should always have direction. Musicality is a complex art that is learned slowly, like a language. One day you'll hear an inflection and you'll decide you like it. Then you learn another and another and another, and soon you can guess which inflections are more or less effective to the human ear. So in today's video, I want to teach you how to express musicality through the snare drum, as crazy as that sounds. And by the way, if you want to learn a little bit more about how I warm up on the snare drum, I've put my snare drum warm up onto this PDF that you can download at robknopper.com/snare warmup. So before I get into the how, let's just talk about phrasing for a second in general. I see it like this: there's two parts of the phrasing journey. The journey starts with the music, the printed page. It goes to your brain, which is the phrasing decision maker, and then it gets translated through your instrument. So that first leg of the musical journey, from your music to your brain, is your musical interpretation of the piece. It has nothing to do with your instrument. It's like this: you are a musician who happens to play the snare drum, but the important part is, the first part is, you are a musician. And so this is where you decide all sorts of things, like the direction of all of the groups of notes. When are we gaining tension? When are we relaxing? How many measures until the next major cadence, whether that's rhythmic or tonal? How many notes until the next, minor arrival point? The idea of developing your language of phrasing is sort of a huge topic on its own that I want to do other videos on. But for now, the second leg of the journey is from your brain to your instrument, speaking your intended musical phrasing through your instrument. It's how you're able to show variations in tension, character, and style through, whatever instrument you're playing. So this is where it gets interesting, especially on snare drum. To solve this problem, your job is to find all the variables that you can manipulate. And what I want to go through is basically the 7 variables that I like to adjust in order to express my phrasing ideas through the drum. Phrasing variable number 1 is dynamics. Dynamics, or the volume of the notes, are probably the easiest and the most common way of showing musicality. And by telling you that you're allowed to adjust dynamic, I'm not telling you that you should break the rules on the page. You're not supposed to ignore the written instructions and sort of phrase on your own with your own dynamics. Your job is to stay within the range of the written dynamic, but still show the variation between, the low end of, say, your mezzo forte dynamic and the high end of your mezzo forte dynamic. There's a range there that's acceptable. You can go this high before it starts to sound forte, and you can go this low before it starts to sound, mezzo piano. It's this game where you have to play like, how loud or how soft can I go in order to express my exciting journey of phrasing without letting the audition committee hear that, yeah, I am just ignoring the written instructions. Number 2 is beating spot. From the center to the edge, you have a lot of space to work with. The edge of the drum sounds thin, while the center sounds thick. And neither of these specifically mean, more intense or more relaxed per se. All it really has to provide is a sense of motion or movement. If you have a series of running notes, like if you have 8 notes in a row and they're exactly the same dynamic, but they're changing tone slightly, then it will sound like that group of notes has direction, which is your goal. And it's up to you to figure out how to utilize this variable to portray or express whatever kind of shape you're trying to show. Okay, number 3 is the actual velocity of your stroke speed. Your stroke speed can be anywhere from very slow to very fast and anywhere in between. And when you're playing snare drum, the physical result of the speed of your stroke is actually affecting how long the stick is on the head. And if the stick is on the head for a long time, which results from a slower stroke speed and from other things like how much you're pushing into the drum, the tone will be thicker, deeper, and wider. A staccato stroke results in a shorter note, more articulate, brighter, and sharper. The actual difference in the length of time that the stick is on the head is the variable. And yes, it may be very minuscule and the result might be subtle, but this is one of the best phrasing tools in our palette of colors. The 4th variable is time manipulation or rhythmic placement. This is a very subtle one and difficult to pull off. Time manipulation is the subtle adjustment of the rhythmic placement of a note to give it a musical effect. It's sometimes dangerous to teach this to students because it almost always has the effect of making somebody sound like they have bad rhythm at first, because it doesn't sound like they're trying to do time manipulation. It just sounds like they're accidentally playing the note in the wrong place. But I think it's important that you learn this concept early. Learn that it exists, play around with it on your own, and start to get comfortable and feel more natural about placement and how you're going to manipulate the time and the actual moment of the note. Think back for a second to the first phrasing tool of dynamics. When you're adjusting dynamics, you can go louder or softer as long as it's within the range of the current written dynamic. And it's the same thing with placement. You can play something on the front edge of the beat or at the back edge of the beat of where the mathematically correct location of the note should be, and it can still sound correct. In fact, professional orchestras play with this constantly. If we let our time go free a little bit and choose placement based on emotional and musical phrasing, some notes will just take longer than others. We'll feel like a note should take longer than some others. It's very important that as a snare drummer, you have very excellent rhythm. So please use this variable sparingly. What you shouldn't do is just go to your lesson and play completely out of time and then say, hey, Rob told me to. The 5th variable is buzz density. This technique has limited applications. You can only do it during rolls. Duh. But buzz density, which is the number of individual bounces per stroke, is an extremely effective and fun tool to adjust to show intensity or show relaxing. It's something that you can adjust throughout the term of a roll from beginning to end to show that a musical phrase is gaining tension or losing tension. The 6th variable also only applies to a roll, which is stroke speed. Buzz rolls give you quite a bit of artistic license. In addition to choosing how densely filled each stroke is, you have the ability to choose how many actual strokes happen within the allotted quarter note or half note. The more strokes, the more intense that moment of the roll is, and vice versa. final variable that I want to talk about is grace note spacing. Everyone teaches that flams, roughs, four-stroke roughs, they should have consistent spacing between the grace notes, right? And I do too. However, if you're thinking in purely musical terms, a tighter flam sounds more intense than a wider flam. You can use the spacing of grace notes to show your musical phrasing and character, as long as you're also showing that your grace note figures are very consistent and intentional. Okay, so that is 7 different variables that you can adjust about your snare drum playing in order to express phrasing, and none of them are incorrect or against what the committee is, allowing you to do. These are your tools. This is your language of playing snare drum. So when you're playing Delacluse or your excerpts, these are the things that can make snare drum playing really fun. And you know what? There's not actually just 7 things. There's more. There's more things that you can adjust about the way you play the instruments, from physical adjustments to sound adjustments to conceptual adjustments. I'd be curious if you have other things that you explore and adjust when you're making music. Go ahead and let me know what those are in the comments. I'm curious to see how you think of, phrasing and musicality on the snare drum. If you are interested in learning about how exactly I warm up on snare drum, you can go ahead and visit robknopper.com/snare warmup, where you can download my guide to warming up on snare drum. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up below. Remember to subscribe to the channel. And by the way, guys, thank you. Thank you so much. We've reached 15,000 subscribers. I really appreciate you being here and watching these videos and being open to these concepts of percussion and audition preparation that I work hard to bring to you. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.